And then accessibility in public facilities. This was my favorite part. I saved it to the end because these were two of my favorite things to see here in Japan. I had the opportunity to visit the Tokyo National Museum and have a tour of some of the accessibility features in the art area of the museum. And this was so interesting to see. If you look at the grounds, and grounds in general, there's a lot of tactile maps that show different areas. This one is specific to the museum. This is specific to the area outside of the museum while we were traveling there. So I think this was closer to the Ministry of Education, but how there are tactile maps in the community and then tactile maps in the specific areas where you're at. So it goes from a much broader to a much more specific area of addressing things. And then when we got into the actual museum, if you think of a typical art museum, a lot of pieces of art and artifacts are behind glass. Mm-hmm. So individuals who are blind and visually impaired can't always see or touch them because of the barriers, and they're very expensive. So it's difficult to do that. What the Tokyo National Museum is working on doing is creating exhibits that are touch-friendly for consumers, not only who are blind and visually impaired, but I did also see that, again, when we talk about universal design, if it works for people who are blind and visually impaired, it works for everybody. Mm-hmm. So even though it was accessible for individuals with vision loss, it was also accessible and enjoyable for many of the sighted people who were there. And this was talking about coins, ancient coins, and this was actually armor, body armor, so you could lift it up and see how heavy it actually was. Also, some of the activities they have at the museum, and this is nice, it's geared not only towards school children who visit the museum, but to all different types of consumers who come to the museum. One of the things, he's like, this was one that they told me, like a traditional wedding, like not a dowry, but brides will carry a box. I'm not sure, it's a decorative box in ceremonies that their family or they may decorate themselves. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Traditional weddings, yeah.
Okay. But if you'd like to, do you know what those are?
Yeah, I really don't know.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not quite sure either. But in traditional weddings, brides will decorate these boxes, and oftentimes it's with calligraphy and not tactile. The museum has this program where they can come in and learn about the different symbols that go on these. So if the bride has a visual impairment, they can still decorate their box in a very traditional way. So I thought that was interesting. They also have this activity with the shells where they'll do a matching game and activity for children. So sighted children and children with visual impairments alike, they'll turn those shells upside down and the students have to feel under the shells so they're not looking at them. So even students who are sighted are feeling underneath them, they do the matching game of what works and what doesn't. And then over here, this is another nice example. There's a hands-on exhibit where children can make their own pictures, and this is the tactile version, so that students who are blind and visually impaired understand the steps that are happening with the creation process. And then this was my favorite part of the museum. This is a tactile map, and you can see this is a very different tactile map than what we look at in the community or the train station, in that this is a map of the museum. But if you look closely, the ceramics area is actually created with a ceramic tile. And the sword area is actually created with a handle of a traditional sword. Metalwork is actually created with metal. And it corresponds to the areas of the museum where these are. And I raved about this map and the fact that it was so meaningful. And at that point, Kozu proceeded to tell me that she actually advised the people who created this based on her experience as a consumer who's blind or visually impaired. So when we look at those different maps, this is the difference between a map that was designed by a consumer versus the train station map that was not necessarily designed by a consumer, and how this one is so much more useful to her. But it was a very interesting thing.